So picture this. You ask a really good friend if they can help you move out of your apartment.
Oh, the absolute worst favor to ask anyone.
Right. It's brutal. But, you offer them a slice of pizza and a cold beer to basically give up their entire Saturday.
And carry heavy boxes up like 3 flights of stairs.
Exactly. And most of the time, your friend is going to gladly say yes to the pizza and the beer. But if you offer that exact same friend $10 to do the exact same amount of work, they will almost certainly be insulted.
Oh, yeah. They're probably going to tell you no.
Which is so weird, right? Because logically, $10 is worth more than a single slice of pizza. I mean, you can buy a slice of pizza with $10 and still have, cash left over. So why does paying someone actually make them violently less likely to help you?
Well, it completely shatters the solution that we have. We like to think that we are these walking calculators.
Right.
We possess this deeply ingrained assumption that human beings process decisions using flawless internal logic. Like we're always maximizing our utility at every single turn.
Like we're just inputting data and getting the best result.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The assumption is that we evaluate situations,
Right.
we weigh the objective costs against the objective benefits, and then we arrive at the optimal choice. But that moving scenario you just described, I mean, that happens every day in the real world.
Yeah, totally.
And it proves that our brains are actually running on a series of hidden, highly contextual algorithms. We are not perfectly rational. We are predictably irrational.
Predictably irrational. I love that. And that is exactly why you are in the right place today. Because whether you are listening to this while you're prepping for a major corporate strategy meeting, or maybe you're trying to design a better user experience for a product, or even if you are just simply trying to navigate the sometimes infuriating complexities of your own relationships, we are going to decode that hidden operating system today.
It is so crucial to understand.
It really is. So for this deep dive, we are drawing heavily on the foundational behavioral economics research of Dan Ariely. And the mission for this deep dive is basically to give you a mental toolkit, a way to see the invisible forces that are shaping your choices every day.
Because they are everywhere.
They really are everywhere. We are going to explore exactly how to avoid irrational comparison traps. We're going to talk about how to balance personal relationships with market expectations, and crucially, how to outsmart your own emotional impulses when your brain's executive function inevitably just goes totally offline.
Yeah, and what is particularly compelling about diving into behavioral economics, I think, isn't merely pointing out cognitive flaws. Like, it's not about making you feel stupid.
Right. It's not a guilt trip.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It is about understanding the evolutionary and the psychological architecture that actually creates those flaws in the first place.
The why behind the what.
Exactly. Because once we comprehend the underlying mechanisms, like, why a price tag ending in 0 completely short-circuits our risk assessment,
Yeah.
or why mixing a financial transaction into a social favor destroys trust on a molecular level.
Right. The $10 pizza thing.
Yeah, once we see that, we stop being passive victims of our environments. We gain the actual ability to design our surroundings to foster better decisions.
So let's dive straight into the deep end here. Let's talk about how we calculate value, or I guess more accurately, how we completely fail to calculate value.
Oh, we are so bad at it.
We really are. Because there is this fundamental assumption that when I look at a price tag for a new car or like a subscription service, or even when I evaluate my own salary, I am judging its absolute value.
Right, you think you're looking at it in a vacuum.
Exactly. But the research suggests that the human brain actually lacks the hardware to do that, doesn't it? Like we literally can't do it.
We really can't. The brain is remarkably terrible at calculating absolute value. I mean, in a purely rational world, you would look at an item and instantly calculate the cost of the raw materials, the labor required, the utility it will bring to your life, the opportunity cost of the money you were spending.
That sounds exhausting.
Because it is. It requires an immense amount of cognitive energy. And evolutionarily speaking, the brain is designed to conserve energy. It wants to be lazy.
Makes sense. Got to save calories.
Right. So instead of developing a system for absolute valuation, we developed a heuristic, a cognitive shortcut. We basically became contrast engines.
Contrast engines. Okay, explain that.
It means we don't judge things in a vacuum. We judge them strictly in relation to whatever happens to be sitting right next to them.
Ah, okay. So the brain is essentially offloading the cognitive heavy lifting.
Exactly.
Instead of calculating the intrinsic value of an object, it just looks around the immediate environment for a localized comparison. I mean, it's easier to say A is bigger than B than it is to determine the exact mass of A.
That is precisely the dynamic. And this comparative flaw, it's actively exploited everywhere. I mean, to really see the mechanics of it, we have to look at the classic experiment involving the subscription models for The Economist magazine.
Wow, I love this one.
It was conducted by researchers at MIT, and they presented students with 3 subscription options. So option A was an online-only subscription for $59.
Okay, 59 bucks, online only.
Option B was a print-only subscription for $125.
Print only, 125. Got it.
And option C was a combination of print and online access, also for $125.
Okay, wait. I just want to isolate the variables here for a second because this is wild. Option B is just the physical magazine for $125. And option C is the physical magazine plus the digital access for the exact same price of $125.
That is correct.
Under no logical framework does option B make sense. I mean, it is objectively inferior to option C in every conceivable way. Why would anyone pay the same price to get less?
They wouldn't. It is entirely useless. And the data actually reflected that. When they presented all 3 options, 84% of the students chose option C, the combo deal.
Which makes sense. It looks like a great deal.
Right. And a mere 16% chose the cheaper option A, the online-only deal. And, as expected, literally 0% chose the useless option B.
Okay, so nobody wanted B?
Nobody.
Yeah.
But the researchers then did something brilliant. They removed the useless option B from the equation completely, and they offered a new group of students just option A for $59 and option C for $125.
Okay, so if human beings were perfectly rational, the removal of an option that nobody wanted shouldn't change the distribution of the remaining choices at all.
Right.
Because option B had 0 market share. Nobody picked it anyway.
It shouldn't change a single thing. But behaviorally, the results inverted entirely.
Really? Entirely?
Entirely. Without option B present, 68% of the students suddenly chose the cheaper $59 option A.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and only 32% opted for the $125 combo.
Wait, I see exactly what is happening here. Option B wasn't actually a product meant to be sold at all. It was just a cognitive framing device. It was a decoy.
It is the textbook definition of the decoy effect, because when a consumer is faced with a $59 online subscription and a $125 combo subscription, the brain has to do that difficult work of absolute valuation.
Right. You have to ask yourself, do I actually want the physical paper?
Exactly. You have to ask, do I value the physical paper enough to part with an additional $66, which is a hard question.
Yeah, that requires actual thought.
But the moment you introduce the decoy, print only for $125, the brain happily abandons the difficult question of intrinsic value. It switches to a much easier question, which of these is the better deal?
And obviously compared to print only for $125, print and online for $125 looks like an absolute steal.
It looks amazing. The decoy shifts the consumer's focus from their internal needs to the external comparison.
You know, this maps perfectly onto real estate strategy. I mean, an agent will deliberately show you a slightly run-down, overpriced house first.
Yes, happens all the time.
And it's not because they think you'll buy it. The rundown house is just the decoy. They are establishing a localized anchor for you.
That's exactly what they're doing.
Because without that decoy, you might walk into the second house, which is the one they actually want to sell you, and you might think, the kitchen is a bit cramped or the price is slightly high. But by forcing your brain to use the rundown house as the immediate contrast point, that second house suddenly feels like a comparative triumph.
It feels like a palace.
Right. We aren't actually evaluating the house at all. We are reacting to the sequence of the contrast trap.
Software companies utilize this incessantly, too, with tiered pricing models.
Oh, like the 3 columns you see on every website.
Yes. You will often see 3 tiers: Basic, Pro, and Enterprise. And the Enterprise tier is usually priced astronomically high, right? With features the average user would never even need.
Like 2047 dedicated satellite support or whatever.
Exactly. The company doesn't actually expect many people to buy Enterprise. The Enterprise tier serves as the decoy to make the Pro tier look like the rational, safe, middle-of-the-road compromise.
That is so sneaky.
It pulls consumers up from the basic tier by making the Pro tier appear comparatively valuable.
But this vulnerability to relative thinking, it doesn't just empty our wallets, does it? Because when I think about the psychological implications, this is the exact architecture of the keeping up with the Joneses phenomenon.
It absolutely is.
This comparative flaw literally dictates our personal happiness.
I would argue the personal cost of the relativity trap is far more damaging than the financial cost.
How so?
Well, if we apply this economic principle to human satisfaction, the data is quite stark. So imagine you earn a salary of $70,000 a year.
Okay, pretty solid.
If your immediate peer group, your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues, if they're all earning $50,000 a year, your brain processes that localized contrast and concludes that you are highly successful. You will generally feel very satisfied and wealthy.
Because I'm winning the local comparison.
Exactly. However, if you take that exact same $70,000 salary and move into a peer group where everyone is earning $90,000 a year, that identical income will suddenly generate feelings of inadequacy and misery.
Even though the absolute utility of the $70,000 didn't change at all.
Not one bit.
Like the caloric intake it can provide, the shelter it can buy, the security it offers, all of that remains mathematically identical. The only thing that shifted was the decoy in the environment.
Your baseline change.
It is an evolutionary status tracker gone completely haywire in a modern environment. It's wild.
Because we evaluate our worth based on relative comparison, it means we are essentially volunteering to run on a treadmill of perpetual dissatisfaction.
You can never win.
Never. There will always be a visible comparison point with a higher salary or, a more luxurious vacation or a larger house.
Yeah.
Unless we consciously intervene, our brains will endlessly reset our baseline of happiness based on the newest, highest localized anchor.
So the defensive strategy here, for anyone listening who wants to avoid irrational comparison traps, it has to be incredibly deliberate.
Highly deliberate.
We have to forcibly shrink our circle of comparison. Like when evaluating a job offer, a major purchase, or even our own life milestones, we have to actively block out the surrounding decoys.
Yes, block the noise.
We have to force the brain out of its comparative shortcut and demand that it do the heavy lifting of absolute valuation. Ask yourself, what is this worth to my specific life? In a vacuum, ignoring entirely what my neighbor is doing.
It requires immense cognitive discipline.
Yeah.
Because, as the research reveals, the brain is absolutely desperate for external anchors to tell it what things are worth.
It's addicted to comparing.
It is, and that leads to a really fascinating problem, actually. If we are incapable of determining absolute value, how do completely new things acquire value in the marketplace?
Oh, that's a good point.
When a novel item is introduced, there is nothing to compare it to.
Right. If a disruptive technology hits the market, or like a newly discovered gemstone, the contrast engine has no fuel at all. There are no localized decoys. So how does the brain assign a dollar figure to something it has literally never seen before?
The mechanism is called anchoring. And the historical case study of Tahitian black pearls provides just the perfect illustration of this.
I don't think I know this story.
It's amazing. So in the 1970s, a businessman named Jean-Claude Bruyère acquired a massive supply of black pearls from French Polynesia.
Okay.
The issue was that there was absolutely no market for them. Consumers had never seen them, they didn't know how to value them, and essentially they just viewed them as oddities. They were practically valueless.
See, if you have an asset with zero perceived value and no existing market, the instinct would normally be to price it extremely low, right? Just to stimulate demand and slowly build a customer base.
That's what you would think. But Bruyère took the exact opposite approach. He partnered with the legendary jeweler Harry Winston.
Oh, wow. Okay, going big.
Huge. They took these unknown, valueless black pearls, and they placed them in the window of Winston's flagship store on Fifth Avenue in New York.
Just right there on Fifth Avenue.
Right there, placed right alongside the most exquisite diamonds, rubies, and emeralds in the entire world. And crucially, they'd attached an exorbitant, breathtakingly high price tag to them.
So he didn't just find a market, he completely manufactured the cognitive context.
Yes, out of thin air.
By placing them geographically next to diamonds and mathematically next to a luxury price tag, he basically hacked the brain's associative network.
He entirely bypassed the fundamental laws of supply and demand. The black pearls did not become valuable because the public intrinsically desired them. They became valuable because the initial anchor, the astronomical price tag and the proximity to established luxury, instructed the public's brains on how to value them.
It gave them the shortcut.
Exactly. Once that initial anchor was set in the collective consciousness, it became the permanent reference point.
That is brilliant, but surely that only works because the anchor possessed like a veneer of logical coherence, right?
What do you mean?
I mean, a pearl is a piece of jewelry, so anchoring it to a diamond makes associative sense. Our brains easily accept the leap, But what happens when the anchor is entirely disconnected from the object, like completely random?
This is where behavioral economics ventures into the deeply unsettling, honestly,
Uh-oh.
because the anchors do not need to be logical at all. They can be completely arbitrary.
Wait, really?
Really. To demonstrate this, researchers conducted an experiment known as the arbitrary coherence study. They asked a group of students to write down the last two digits of their social security number on a piece of paper.
Just the last two
Yep.
digits.
Then they were asked to bid in an auction for various totally unrelated items, like a bottle of wine, a cordless keyboard, a design book.
Okay, so you are simply holding a random number in your working memory. Let's say my social security number ends in 89. I write down 89, and then I immediately look at a bottle of wine.
Exactly. And the researchers analyzed the bids, and the correlation was undeniable. The students whose social security numbers ended in the highest quartile, so numbers between 80 and 99, consistently bid hundreds of percent more for the wine and the gadgets than the students whose numbers ended in the lowest quartile from 01 to 20.
I have to pause on that because the implications are actually staggering.
It is very disturbing.
You are telling me that a completely random government-assigned administrative number, simply because it happened to be recently loaded into my working memory, unconsciously hijacked my valuation software and dictated the maximum price I was willing to pay for a physical object that has nothing to do with it.
Yes, the mere act of contemplating the numbers served as a neural anchor. Because the students' brains were incapable of independently calculating the absolute value of the keyboard or the wine, they desperately searched the immediate cognitive environment for a starting point.
Any starting point.
Any starting point. So they grabbed onto the only numerical data available in their working memory, even though it's completely irrelevant, and they adjusted their bids from that arbitrary starting line.
But wait, if our valuation software is this easily compromised by literally a random two-digit number, how do macro markets ever achieve any sort of rational equilibrium? Well, it seems like consumer pricing should just collapse into total chaos if we are this vulnerable to arbitrary priming.
Well, macro markets do eventually find equilibrium through aggregate forces, right? Like supply constraints, competition, things like that over time.
Sure.
But the individual consumer remains highly vulnerable to the initial anchor. It explains why a $50 t-shirt feels outrageously expensive if you're in a discount store, but it feels like an absolute bargain in a high-end boutique where all the surrounding items, the anchors, are priced in $500.
Ah, right. It's all contextual.
The initial price we encounter establishes the cognitive baseline,
Yeah.
and all subsequent decisions are merely relative adjustments from that arbitrary point.
Man, so if marketers possess the ability to manipulate our valuation with high anchors and decoy options, there must be an extreme edge case, like a variable that doesn't just bend the valuation curve, but completely breaks the algorithm entirely.
There absolutely is.
And diving into the research, that variable is the price of zero, the psychological phenomenon of free.
Yeah, zero is not merely a point on a mathematical continuum. From a behavioral perspective, zero is a distinct emotional trigger.
It feels different.
Completely different. It totally bypasses our standard cost-benefit analysis circuitry, and it activates an entirely different neurological pathway.
Let's dissect the chocolate experiment here, because I think this exposes the specific vulnerability perfectly.
Yes, a classic Ariely study.
The researchers set up a scenario offering people a choice between two distinct types of chocolate. The first option was a premium Lindt truffle priced at 15 cents, and the second option was a standard Hershey's Kiss priced at 1 cent.
Right. And in this initial scenario, the consumer is engaging in a rational comparative choice. The majority, about 73%, chose the Lindt truffle.
Which makes sense.
The calculus is sound. A premium truffle is generally worth significantly more than 15 cents on the open market.
Oh yeah, they're usually like $1 or more.
Right, so the consumer recognizes an excellent value proposition and happily pays the 14-cent premium for a massive leap in quality.
It's a perfectly logical maximization of utility. But then the researchers altered the parameters. They dropped the price of both chocolates by precisely 1 cent.
Just 1 penny.
Just 1 penny. The relative distance between the two options remains mathematically identical.
Exactly.
The Lindt truffle is now 14 cents, and the Hershey's Kiss is now 0 cents. It is completely free.
And logically, the calculation shouldn't change. The premium chocolate is still only 14 cents more expensive than the standard chocolate. In fact, the Lindt truffle at 14 cents is an even better objective deal than it was at 15 cents.
But the introduction of the word free caused the logic to just evaporate. Suddenly, 69% of the participants flipped their preference. They abandon the premium chocolate and rush to take the inferior Hershey's Kiss just because the price hit zero.
They couldn't resist it.
I see the mechanics of what is happening here, but I really want to understand the neurology. It's not just a math error, right? It seems like paying anything, even a single penny, involves a microcalculation of loss. Zero is the only price with no downside, so it triggers a disproportionate effective response.
You are hitting on the core principle of loss aversion. In behavioral economics, the pain of losing something, even a single cent, is psychologically significantly more powerful than the pleasure of gaining something of equal value.
We hate losing things.
We despise it. Whenever we engage in a financial transaction, our brain registers a potential downside. We are forced to calculate opportunity costs. Like, what else could I do with this penny? We consider the risk of making a poor choice. We experience the slight subconscious friction of parting with our resources. But zero completely eradicates the perception of risk.
It's the affect heuristic taking over. The word free acts as an emotional floodgate. We experience this irrational surge of excitement, a feeling of having somehow outsmarted the system.
Yes, that little high.
And that immediate, intense emotional response, the affect, it completely drowns out the prefrontal cortex's attempt to calculate the actual utility of the inferior chocolate.
We become so fixated on avoiding the explicit cost of the penny that we completely ignore the implicit cost of our choice.
And the implicit cost being what?
The implicit cost is the lost opportunity to enjoy a vastly superior product for a negligible fee.
I have to confess, I fall for this exact cognitive trap constantly with online shopping. Like, the free shipping threshold is my absolute kryptonite.
Oh, it gets everyone.
I will have $45 worth of items in my cart, items I genuinely need, and the shipping fee is $5. Now, if I just pay the $50, I have maximized my utility perfectly. But the website dangles that little banner at the top. Free shipping on orders over $50.
And how do you respond to that localized anchor?
Oh, it's terrible. I will spend 20 minutes scouring the website to find a $10 item that I do not need, I do not want, and I will likely throw away in a month just to push my cart total to $55.
Just to get the free shipping.
Yes. I am actively destroying my own capital, spending $55 instead of $50 solely to avoid the psychological friction of the $5 shipping fee. I am literally spending more money to save a smaller amount of money, all because the word free short-circuited my risk assessment.
That is the perfect encapsulation of the zero-cost trap. Retailers understand that free is the most potent weapon in their behavioral arsenal. They leverage our deep-seated aversion to loss to drive irrational overconsumption.
And it works so well.
It works flawlessly. We focus entirely on the explicit avoidance of the fee while remaining completely blind to the implicit waste of our resources.
But the source material introduces a really profound nuance here that I don't want to skip over. The zero price effect isn't solely a mechanism for corporate exploitation. It actually fundamentally alters our social dynamics too. Because the word free doesn't always make us greedy, right? Under the right circumstances, it actually makes us far more generous.
This represents a massive pivot in the research, demonstrated perfectly by the MIT cookie experiment.
I love this one too.
Researchers set up a booth offering cookies to students. In the first condition, they priced the cookies at 1 cent.
Again, just a penny.
Right, it was a negligible cost, essentially a proxy for free, but it still required a financial transaction. Under this condition, students would approach the booth and take multiple handfuls of cookies.
Because the presence of the penny establishes a specific framework. It triggers a market mindset, like I have paid my entry fee, this is a commercial transaction, and therefore I have the right to maximize my return on investment.
It's the all-you-can-eat buffet mentality.
Exactly.
But when the researchers removed the 1 cent price tag and made the cookies entirely free, the behavioral output completely reversed. Instead of hoarding, the students would approach the booth and take only 1 or 2 cookies.
Just 1 or 2?
Yeah. And when interviewed afterward, they explicitly stated that they wanted to ensure there were enough cookies left for other people.
Wow. So by removing the financial cost, they actually cured the selfish behavior.
They did.
Because scarcity pricing, even just a penny, triggers the market mindset. But abundance, which is what free signals in this context, triggers a communal mindset. The penny essentially acts as a toggle switch between 2 entirely different moral frameworks.
It proves that we all operate simultaneously within 2 completely distinct systems of interaction. Behavioral economists classify these as market norms and social norms.
Okay, let's define those for a second.
Sure. The social norm operating system is governed by our evolutionary history of reciprocal altruism. It is the realm of friendship, trust, community, mutual aid. In this world, we perform actions out of goodwill without calculating an immediate return on investment.
Right. And the market norm operating system, conversely, is governed by exact exchange. It is the realm of wages, prices, cost-benefit analysis, contractual obligations. You get exactly what you pay for, and morality is largely excluded from the equation.
And the chaos in our lives almost always occurs when we inadvertently drag an interaction from one operating system into the other.
Which brings us right back to the pizza and the $10 from the very beginning of the deep dive.
It connects perfectly.
When I ask my friend to help me move, I am initiating a request within the social norm framework. My friend evaluates the request based on the strength of our bond, their desire to support me, and the inherent satisfaction of being a reliable member of the community. They are operating in a space of reciprocal altruism.
But the moment you add the sentence, "I will pay you $10 for your time," you forcefully yank the interaction out of the social norm system and drop it directly into the market norm system.
So when I offer the $10, I am not adding a bonus to the friendship. I am actively overwriting it.
They're replacing it.
I am forcing a market valuation onto a priceless social bond. Suddenly, my friend isn't evaluating a favor, they are evaluating a wage. And a wage of $10 for a full Saturday of manual labor is deeply insulting.
You have commodified their goodwill.
Wow.
In the social world, a favor has infinite abstract value. In the market world, a favor is a transaction with a highly specific, easily criticized price tag.
Right.
Once you introduce the currency, the market mindset takes over, and the person calculates, is my physical labor and time only worth $10 to this person? The answer is always no.
This explains why introducing money into social situations feels so viscerally uncomfortable. Like, you cannot pay your mother-in-law for cooking a holiday dinner.
Oh, please do not do that.
It would be a catastrophic breach of protocol. But this dynamic isn't limited to interpersonal relationships either. It dictates trust on a massive institutional level. Let's analyze the daycare experiment by Urignesi and Aldo Resticchini because I think it is the ultimate cautionary tale of what happens when authorities try to use market forces to solve social problems.
It is a landmark study in understanding how fragile trust really is. So a group of daycare centers was struggling with a persistent problem. Parents were frequently showing up late to pick up their children after closing time.
Very annoying for the staff.
Extremely. Now, under the existing framework, which relied purely on social norms, a late parent experienced a significant amount of guilt. They knew they were inconveniencing the teachers and violating the unwritten social contract of the community. That internal guilt served as a powerful, albeit imperfect, deterrent.
But the daycare administrators wanted precision. They wanted to optimize the system and just eliminate the tardiness completely. So they applied a classic market solution to a social problem.
They instituted a monetary fine.
Which seems logical.
Right. If a parent arrived more than 10 minutes late, a specific financial penalty was added to their monthly bill. The administrators assumed that layering a financial disincentive on top of the existing social guilt would aggressively drive down the rate of late pickups.
But the outcome was the exact opposite of their projections. The rate of late pickups didn't drop, it skyrocketed. They actually incentivized the exact behavior they were trying to eliminate.
Because the fine did not function as an additional deterrent. It functioned as a price tag. A moment the fine was introduced, the daycare shifted the entire environment from a social norm to a market norm. The parents subconsciously processed the new data and realized, oh, this is no longer a moral failing. I am not burdening a teacher. I am simply purchasing an extended childcare service for a highly reasonable fee.
They commodified the guilt. Once there is a price tag, it is just a premium service. The parents basically bought the right to be late, completely absolving themselves of the social friction. But here is the critical structural question. Let's say the daycare administrators review the data, they realize the fine was a massive mistake, and they decide to reverse course. Can they simply cancel the fine and expect the parents to revert to the old system of social guilt?
The data is unequivocally clear on this. No.
No.
Introducing market norms is an irreversible chemical reaction. It is the equivalent of squeezing toothpaste out of a tube. When the daycare centers eventually removed the financial penalty, the rate of late pickups did not decrease back to the original baseline. It remained highly elevated.
Because the trust architecture had been permanently compromised.
Yes.
The social contract relies on ambiguity and mutual vulnerability.
Well,
Once you introduce a ledger, the vulnerability is destroyed. The parents had been trained to view the teacher's time as a cheap commodity. Removing the price tag didn't magically restore the moral weight of the relationship.
this is exactly how businesses continually fracture relationships with their consumers and their employees. A corporation will spend millions on marketing to convince you that you are part of their family.
Oh, I hate that.
Right. They use social norm language to build deep emotional loyalty. But the moment there is a slight dispute, say you are one day late on a payment, or you request a minor exception to a rule, they instantly revert to rigid market norms. They hit you with a hidden fee, or they cite a technicality in the terms of service.
And the consumer experiences that not as a standard business practice, but as a profound personal betrayal. You cannot court a customer using the rules of friendship and then penalize them using the rules of the free market.
The cognitive dissonance shatters the trust entirely. So the actionable defense mechanism for the listener, if you want to balance personal relationships with market expectations, is to strictly quarantine these two operating systems.
Do not mix them.
Do not.
Huh?
If you need a favor from a friend, or if you are trying to cultivate organic loyalty within a team, you must exclusively use social currency.
Which means using gifts, time, or shared experiences. If my friend helps me move, I don't give them cash. I buy them dinner, or I bring them an exceptional bottle of wine. A gift, regardless of its monetary cost, operates firmly within the social norm framework.
It feels completely different.
It serves as a signaling mechanism of appreciation and preserves 100% of the trust. A cash payment is a wage, and it immediately shifts the dynamic to an employer's employee relationship.
You must respect the boundaries of the operating system you are currently in.
Okay, we have covered immense ground on how external variables manipulate us. We've seen how a decoy price hacks our valuation software, how the illusion of zero cost short circuits our risk assessment, and how introducing money completely overwrites our social trust.
That's a lot to process.
It is.
Yeah.
But the most insidious form of predictable irrationality doesn't come from a marketing department or a price tag. It comes from our own internal neurochemistry. We really need to talk about what happens when our emotional state hijacks our logical capabilities.
This is a huge area. This is the domain of the hot-cold empathy gap, a concept pioneered by behavioral economist George Lowenstein.
Hot-cold empathy gap, break that down.
It basically exposes the fundamental illusion of self-control. Most of the time, when we are planning our lives, we're in a cold state. We're calm, rested, satiated, and our baseline physical needs are met.
Chillin'.
Right. And in this state, our prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain responsible for executive function, long-term planning, and logic, it is firmly in control.
And in that cold state, we deeply overestimate our own morality and discipline. We inherently trust our baseline state to dictate our future actions, completely ignoring the fact that our neurochemistry is going to undergo massive fluctuations.
Yes. We believe we will stick to the strict diet, we will remain calm and articulate during a stressful argument, and we will flawlessly execute our financial budgets.
Because it's easy to plan when you're not stressed.
Exactly. But then, inevitably, we enter a hot state. A hot state is triggered by primal physiological or emotional arousal. Intense hunger, sheer exhaustion, furious anger, or sexual arousal.
And when that trigger occurs, the decision-making mechanism doesn't just waver, the actual neural pathways shift.
The brain literally changes hands.
The prefrontal cortex is essentially downregulated, and the limbic system, the amygdala, the primal emotional centers of the brain, they just seize control. We become, biologically speaking, a different entity.
To demonstrate just how radically our preferences and morals shift during a hot state, Ariely and his colleague George Lowenstein conducted the MIT sexual arousal study.
Oh, this one is eye-opening.
Yeah, keeping a clinical perspective here, the design of the study is crucial for understanding cognitive dissonance. They asked male college students to complete a comprehensive questionnaire regarding their sexual preferences, their propensity for risk-taking, and their strict adherence to consent and ethical boundaries.
In the first phase, the students completed the questionnaire while in a normal, calm, cold state.
And the baseline data was highly responsible. The students universally indicated that they would strictly use protection, they would avoid reckless behavior, and they possessed a firm, unwavering respect for boundaries. They were answering using their prefrontal cortex.
But the researchers then required the students to answer the exact same set of questions while actively placed in a state of high sexual arousal, a severe hot state.
And the divergence in the data was staggering.
Completely flipped.
Once the hot state was induced, the students' stated willingness to engage in highly risky behavior, to forego protection, and to ignore previously established moral boundaries skyrocketed. The limbic system prioritized immediate biological gratification over all long-term rational planning and ethical considerations.
The crucial takeaway here isn't merely about sexuality. It is a massive issue for behavioral predictive modeling in general. In the cold state, those students were not lying. They genuinely believed they would act responsibly. They simply lacked the neurological empathy to simulate how their own cognitive processing would warp once the hot state took over.
They couldn't imagine it.
It is like trying to accurately remember the sheer panic of drowning while you were sitting comfortably in a dry living room.
We just cannot empathize with our future emotionally aroused selves. And this biological vulnerability dictates our everyday failures. It is the precise reason why diets fail.
Oh, the diet cycle.
You meticulously design a rational, low-calorie meal plan on a Sunday afternoon after a large lunch. You are in a cold state. The prefrontal cortex is unchallenged.
You're full, so planning to not eat is easy.
Right. But on Wednesday evening, when you are cognitively depleted from work, stressed, and you smell fresh pizza, you are plunged into a hot state. The rational architect from Sunday has absolutely zero authority over the hungry, exhausted limbic system on Wednesday.
It's the ultimate failure of the designated driver strategy.
What do you mean?
Well, we navigate the world assuming our logical brain is the designated driver, ensuring we make safe choices. We completely fail to realize that the moment we get triggered by anger, by hunger, by stress, the designated driver is suddenly the one buying the shots.
That is a great way to put it.
Future you, in a heated argument, is going to say incredibly cruel, destructive things to your partner that present you would be horrified by.
Because the hot state prioritizes immediate emotional release over the long-term preservation of the relationship. The amygdala demands the immediate catharsis of striking back. And the tragic part is that the moment the argument ends and the adrenaline subsides, the moment you re-enter the cold state, the prefrontal cortex comes back online, surveys the damage, and you are flooded with intense regret.
So the critical question is, how do we manage impulsive decisions when we know with absolute certainty that our executive function is going to go offline during peak emotional states? If willpower is biologically destined to fail, how do we defend ourselves?
The only reliable defense against the empathy gap is the architectural strategy of pre-commitment. You cannot fight the hot state while you are in it. You must make the decision while you are still in the cold state and structurally lock your future self into that choice.
This is often referred to as the Ulysses contract, right?
Yes, derived from the Homeric epic. Ulysses knew his ship was approaching the island of the Sirens, whose song was so intoxicating it compelled sailors to steer their ships into the rocks and perish.
Right.
Ulysses desperately wanted to hear the song, but he possessed the self-awareness to know that once he heard it, once the hot state was triggered, his rational mind would be destroyed.
He didn't rely on willpower. He didn't tell his crew, I am a disciplined leader. I will simply resist the urge to steer the ship into the rocks. He knew his executive function would be totally useless against the limbic takeover.
Exactly. So he engaged in strict pre-commitment. While still in the cold state, he ordered his men to bind him tightly to the mast of the ship with heavy ropes. He then ordered the crew to plug their own ears with beeswax and issued a standing command. Under no circumstances were they to untie him, regardless of how aggressively he begged or threatened them once the song began.
He outsourced his discipline.
He outsourced his discipline to the physical environment before the temptation ever arrived.
He threw the keys into the ocean before the party started. So, translating this to modern everyday life, pre-commitment means actively designing your environment to bypass the need for willpower entirely. Like, if you know you binge junk food when you are stressed out, relying on willpower while staring at a bag of chips is a guaranteed failure.
It won't work.
The Ulysses contract is refusing to buy the chips at the grocery store on Sunday. You have pre-committed to the diet by structurally removing the option to fail from your Wednesday night environment.
If you struggle with impulse buying online late at night, a Ulysses contract involves deleting your saved credit card information from your browser.
Oh, that's a good one.
You force your future hot state self to physically stand up, find your wallet, and manually type in the numbers. You are introducing artificial friction to slow down the limbic system and give the prefrontal cortex time to reboot.
This maps perfectly onto the procrastination study conducted at MIT too, doesn't it? Because procrastination is simply the ultimate daily battle between our cold state wanting to achieve a long-term goal and our hot state desperately demanding the instant gratification of scrolling social media.
It is the perfect example. Dan Ariely tested the effectiveness of external structures in combating procrastination by dividing his students into 3 distinct groups for their term papers.
Okay.
Group 1 was subjected to strict, evenly spaced deadlines imposed directly by the professor. They had to submit paper 1 in week 4, paper 2 in week 8, and so on.
Very rigid.
Very rigid. Group 2 was granted total autonomy. They could submit all their papers whenever they chose, as long as it was before the final day of the semester.
Total freedom.
And Group 3 was given a hybrid model. They had to set their own deadlines at the beginning of the semester, but once they declared those dates, they were locked in and penalized for missing them.
So Group 1 has the Ulysses contract forced upon them by an external authority. Group 2 is operating entirely without a net, relying purely on their own internal willpower to manage the hot state. And Group 3 is voluntarily designing their own Ulysses contract. What did the performance data show?
The results perfectly validate the necessity of pre-commitment. Group 1, operating under strict external deadlines, produced the highest quality work and achieved the best overall grades.
Not surprising.
The external structure entirely bypassed their need for daily willpower. Group 2, armed with total freedom, performed the worst.
They just waited until the last minute, right?
Yep. Without external boundaries, they consistently succumbed to the hot state of instant gratification, procrastinated massively, and produced rushed, inferior work at the last minute. And Group 3, who instituted their own binding deadlines, fell squarely in the middle.
The external structure isn't oppressive, it is actually cognitively liberating. It offloads the immense biological burden of constant self-regulation. We cannot rely on willpower, because willpower is a finite resource that depletes rapidly under stress. We have to design systems that protect us from our own predictable irrationality.
The structures we build around ourselves ultimately dictate the behaviors we exhibit.
Let's synthesize this massive journey we have been on today, because for you, the listener, the overarching revelation is that the flawless logical machine you thought you possessed is largely an illusion.
We are predictably irrational.
Our cognitive hardware is wired to fall for decoy pricing and localized comparison traps. We allow the emotional surge of zero cost to trick us into terrible deals. We completely fracture our relationships when we attempt to mix market transactions into social favors. And our rational algorithms are routinely hijacked by the primal demands of our own emotional hot states.
But the empowering shift occurs when you realize that understanding these flaws gives you the blueprint to override them. You can actively shrink your circle of comparison to evaluate your life on absolute terms. You can fiercely protect your friendships by using social currency instead of cash. And you can build Ulysses contracts to defend your long-term goals against your short-term impulses.
Before we sign off, there is one final, incredibly provocative concept from Ariely's research that we have to examine, because I think it is deeply relevant to the trajectory of modern society. We've analyzed the mechanics of money, but we haven't discussed the psychological distance of money. Tell us about the token experiment.
This is an experiment that should really give everyone pause. Ariely set up a scenario where participants were given a series of complex math puzzles and paid a specific amount of money for every puzzle they solved.
Okay.
The critical variable was the method of payment. One group was paid directly in physical cash, actual dollar bills handed to them for every correct answer.
Cold, hard cash.
Right. The second group was paid in plastic tokens, which they would simply take to another desk across the room to immediately exchange for cash.
So the economic value is identical. The only difference is a momentary intermediary step, tokens instead of dollars.
A tiny logistical difference, but it created a massive behavioral shift. When participants were given the opportunity to self-report their scores, essentially the opportunity to cheat, the group dealing with the plastic tokens cheated at a significantly higher rate than the group dealing with physical cash.
Why? Why does inserting a plastic token into the chain make an otherwise honest person more likely to commit fraud? Is it because a token feels like a poker chip? Like we are culturally conditioned to view chips as part of a game rather than a strict financial transaction, so our moral guard just drops.
It's about the abstraction of morality. Physical cash carries a tangible psychological weight. It is deeply ingrained in our moral development. When you steal physical cash, the action is unambiguous. Your internal moral compass immediately sounds the alarm.
You feel like a thief.
You do. But when money is converted into an abstract concept like a plastic token, the psychological distance between the action and the theft increases. It feels less like stealing someone's money and more like gaming a bureaucratic system. The abstraction softens the moral friction, making dishonesty significantly easier to rationalize.
And this leads to the ultimate provocative question for you to take away today. We are currently accelerating toward a completely cashless, highly abstracted digital economy. Our financial lives are increasingly just numbers on a screen, credit card swipes, digital wallets, and decentralized crypto tokens. As we systematically remove the physical, tangible weight of cash from our daily interactions, are we unintentionally designing a global environment that expands the psychological distance of our actions?
It's a scary thought.
Are we building a world that makes it structurally easier for all of us to be just a little bit more dishonest? Think deeply about that the next time you simply tap your phone to authorize a transaction.
It forces us to ask whether our moral anchors are tied to our actual values or merely tied to the physical design of our systems.
An incredible thought to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden algorithms of the human mind. Take this toolkit, examine the pricing structures around you, protect your social bonds, and pre-commit to your goals. Remember, just because your brain's navigation system feels confident doesn't mean it isn't charting a course straight into a lace.
Stay highly aware and design your environment before it designs you.
Until next time.